All right, so today's lesson is going to be about email etiquette, which is very important, especially because we are doing remote learning right now. It's always important, but it's especially important right now. So, what is email etiquette? Well, first let's talk about what etiquette is. These are the definitions given by dictionary.com that you can read, but I think they're kind of confusing, so really you can think about etiquette as being polite and professional in really any setting. By the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to write a polite and professional email to your teachers, which is something that you're going to have to do a lot this semester, even when we go back to school in person. So, why does email etiquette matter? Why are we even learning about this? Well, it matters for actually a lot of reasons. The first one is because, like I said, we're doing remote learning right now, and this is going to be your main form of communication with your teachers outside of the Go Live sessions. So you really want to make a good impression on your teachers. You want your teachers to like you, and you want your teachers to think that you're smart because you are. Also, you want to show respect. Respect is not just about showing them that they have an authority over you, but respect is about showing that you have respect for their time and you have respect for the fact that they are reading your email. Even adults do this. They care about email etiquette so that they can show respect to each other. You also want to be careful about your tone. I think we all know that sometimes when we text things to our friends, things can get misinterpreted really easily. You can't always tell what someone's tone or attitude is over text, and that goes for email too. So the more context that you can give and the more thoughtful your email is, the less likely you are going to be misinterpreted, or the less likely whoever is receiving your email is going to think that you are rude when you're not trying to be. And also clarity. You want to make sure that you are as clear as possible in your emails about what you are asking for. That way, someone is going to respond quicker. So there are a lot of components to email etiquette, but part one is going to be the subject line. The subject line is what you see in your inbox before you open the email. So here's a screenshot of my inbox from this morning. Look at all of these emails. There's not a whole lot there right now because it's early in the morning, but I can tell you that teachers and most working adults receive hundreds of emails a day. So look at all of these subject lines. I've blacked some out for privacy. And look at that circled email, the blue circle. What do you think the circled email is about? The subject line is textbook email to students. I would guess that this email, before even reading it, is about a textbook email to students, because that is what the subject line says. So before I even open the email, I know exactly what to expect, and I know that that's something I need to put on my priority list. Now, look at the rest of the inbox, though. Specifically, look at this email that's now circled. What do you think the circled email is about? Because I'll tell you, I have no idea, because there's literally no subject line. So the reason that's an issue is because, like I said before, teachers and most adults get hundreds of emails a day. So if I see all of these emails in my inbox, I am more likely to not prioritize an email that doesn't have a subject line, because I know I'm going to have to open it and read the whole thing to tell what it's about later on, and I might forget. Or because there are so many emails there and there's no subject line, I might just not see it at all. And then I just won't respond to your email, not because I'm trying to ignore you, but because I never saw your email. So that's why subject lines are really important. Always have a subject line. No matter what it is, never under any circumstances should you not have a subject line. You always want to make sure that the person who is receiving your email can see a preview of what the email is going to be about in their inbox. So when you're writing a subject line, you want to follow 3 basic rules. You want to be clear, so clearly state what the email is going to be about. At the same time, though, you want to be short. You don't want to put your whole email in the subject line, of course. And you want to be correct. When I say correct, I mean correct in capitalization and punctuation. That is very important too, because if I am looking through my email inbox again and you've lowercased your entire subject line because you like the aesthetic of lowercase letters, good for you, I guess, but I'm probably not going to notice it because lowercase letters don't really stand out. So, here are some examples of bad and good subject lines. A bad example would be, "Yo shans!" Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. HW? Question mark, question mark. I hope it's obvious why this is bad. It is definitely improper and way too informal for a teacher. So a better subject line would be E2, P2, dash, homework question. If I look at that subject line, I know not only exactly what this is going to be about, it's going to be about a question on the homework, but I teach multiple classes. So I also know immediately what class this person is from and what homework they're going to have a question about. And also, it has correct punctuation and correct capitalization, so my eyes aren't going to just glaze over it in my inbox. Here's another bad one. Essay due? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, LOL. I have no idea what that means. But a good version of that would be HE2P6 dash essay due date. Oh, great. Again, they told me what class they're a part of and what period they're in, and I know that the email is going to be asking something about the essay due date. And again, correct capitalization, correct punctuation. I'm not going to skip over it in my inbox. And this one. I hope that this doesn't happen to any of you, but sometimes it does. Sprinkles is dead. Sad winky face. Big sad. All right. I don't know who Sprinkles is. And Big Sad is not proper English. Dead is not spelled correctly, and there's a weird emoji that's making me a little bit uncomfortable, so I'm not really going to be inclined to open this, and I have no idea what to expect, so I'm a little nervous to open it too. Versus, let's say Sprinkles was your cat, and your cat died, and you're distraught over that. Maybe you could send me an email with the subject line like this. HE2P7 dash extension request? Because then I know I'm going to open it and you're going to be requesting an extension on a due date. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about Sprinkles in the email. But I know right away what your request is going to be, not just the emotional context. So that's also important. Those are all examples of good subject lines. So really what you want to follow as a student is you want in your subject line to include your class and your period, and you can abbreviate them. So E2, E1, HE2, H stands for honors. Just come up with a consistent system that you know I will recognize. And your period number. So that's important because if you're asking a question about the homework, obviously we're assigning different homework to different classes. So we want to know what homework you're talking about. State in the subject line whether it is a question, a request, or something else, because that will let your teacher know, all right, does this require an immediate response? State what the email pertains to, so homework, essay, today's lesson, etc. Don't use all caps or no caps. We already talked about the no caps thing, but don't use all caps because you might get mistaken for spam, and sometimes those emails, if the subject line is in all caps, go straight into the spam folder and we don't see it at all. And also it just feels like you're shouting at us, which is rude. And don't use emojis. I really like emojis, but they're a bit too informal for communication with your teacher. And also, you don't know what kind of operating system your teacher is working on their computer. So the emoji might not even show up, and it might not just show up as a black box, and that looks kind of weird. So don't use emojis. All right. Now that we've covered subject lines, we're going to talk about part 2, which is recipients, CC and BCC. You may have seen those abbreviations when you are writing an email and have no idea what those are about. We're going to talk about how to use them and what they mean. So, let's say you're writing an email and you see all of these options. That to field is who are you addressing this to directly. So if you're sending an email to one person, which is usually the case if you're a student, you want to always use the to field. When in doubt, use the to field. That's the one that you are going to use the most. It's just the email is addressed to this person and I am sending it to this person. So I'm putting their email address in the to field. The ones where people get a little bit more confused though are CC and BCC. So CC stands for carbon copy, which is interesting because it's digital, it's not carbon, but whatever. Email addresses in the CC field will get a copy of the email that you sent to whoever is listed in the to field. Everybody under the CC field can see the email addresses of everybody under the CC field and under the to field as well. So you might think, okay, great, but what's the difference between that and the to field? Well, the difference is you want to use CC when you want someone else to get a copy of the email, but the email isn't necessarily addressed to them. So let's say you are writing an email to your teacher, for example, and the email is addressed to your teacher, Dear Ms. Hans. But you also want to send a copy to your parents because your parents said, I want to see that you emailed your teacher about this. The email is not to your parents, it's to your teacher. So you wouldn't put your parents in the to field. You would put your parents in the CC field so that they get a copy of the email. The next one is probably the one people are most confused about. That is BCC, and that is blind carbon copy. So that's the exact same as CC, except the email addresses in the BCC field will not be visible to people under the CC or the to fields. So that's if you're trying to send a copy to someone else, but you don't want anybody else to see what the email addresses of the people under the BCC field are. You probably won't use this as a student, but I just thought I should include it. This is usually used by teachers if we're emailing multiple parents and we don't want to share parent emails, that kind of thing. When in doubt, though, always use the to field. All right, now we're going to get into writing the actual email. So we're first going to talk about salutation, which is basically a fancy word for your greeting. It's how you open your email. You always want to have a salutation that directly and properly addresses the person or the people that you are sending the email to. So here's some examples. Dear Ms. Hans. Hello, Ms. Hans. Notice that anytime you have dear or hello and then the person's name, you always want to have a comma after your salutation. That's just proper. For some reason, that's how we do it. To whom it may concern is also something that you can use, but don't use it often. You'd only ever use to whom it may concern if you're not sure what the name of the recipient is. So for example, if you were emailing a college admissions office or you were emailing a company and you weren't sure what person would be reading your email, you would write to whom it may concern. But otherwise, whenever possible, you want to use the person's name. But when addressing people, and this is something that I frequently get questions from students about, how do you address adults? Well, when emailing adults, obviously, always refer to them with the appropriate prefix and their last name, unless they tell you otherwise. But some people don't know what prefixes mean. So here is a list of common prefixes that you would use with teachers. Miss is used for an unmarried woman. Mrs. is used for a married woman. And Ms., which is what I go by, is used for none of your business. Or it's used for when you're not sure about a woman's marital status. So the reason I have Ms. highlighted here is because anytime you are writing to a woman and you're not sure about her marital status, or you're not sure if she goes by Miss or Mrs., this should be your default. Because there are a lot of unmarried women and married women who still go by Ms. because they just don't want to be defined by their marital status. So unless you're sure that the person you are emailing goes by Mrs. or Miss, just use Ms. It's kind of a catch-all. And then Mr. is when you are emailing a man. That being said, if someone has a doctorate degree, refer to them as doctor instead of Mr. or Ms. If you're not sure, most of our administrators, so our principals and our assistant principals, have doctorate degrees. You can always look up on the school website to see if the person you are addressing has a doctorate or not. They might still go by Ms. or Mr., but it's good to be respectful and it's good to acknowledge their accomplishment because doctorates are a lot of work. All right. Part 4, finally, we're going to talk about the email body. So this is the actual message of your email. So this is the message of your email. And in the message of your email, you want to first state your name and class period. This is really important. You stated your class period hopefully in the subject line, but just in case you still want to state it again in the first sentence of your email, as well as your name, because guess what? Your email addresses are your student ID numbers, and it may shock you to know that out of our hundreds of students, teachers do not memorize who has what ID number. So please make sure that you introduce yourself in the first line of your email, because I have received emails from students before where they did not put their names, and I had no idea how to answer their question because I had no idea who was emailing me. So make sure you do that. Then get to your point quickly. State the purpose of your email in the first 2 sentences. Provide any context that is needed. And finally, thank your recipient for their time, but this can also be in your sign-off, which we'll talk about soon. Also, use correct grammar and punctuation, and do not use abbreviations. That is very important. Correct grammar and punctuation, but not abbreviations. The big thing to remember is that an email is a letter. It is not a text message. Email stands for electronic mail. Treat it as if you are writing a letter that you are going to send in the mail. Even if you're writing an email from your phone, it is not a text message. It needs to be written like a letter. So it doesn't have to be super formal. You can use contractions. You can say don't instead of do not, and you're not writing an essay, but you do want it to be grammatically correct. So here are some examples of good and bad email bodies based on real emails I have received before. Hi, Ms. Haddons. I forgot the homework, LOL. Please respond! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, smiley face. Aside from the fact that almost everything is misspelled and there is no capitalization, this is just really awkward and I wouldn't know how to respond to it. Here's a better example. Dear Ms. Hans, this is Smitty Werben Jensen from your first period English 3 class. I forgot to write the due date for our Crucible essay down in class. Could you remind me of the due date? Thank you for your time. This is a very good email because 1, it's short. It's not taking a lot of my time to read it. 2, he has a salutation, dear Ms. Hans. He introduces himself in the first sentence with his name and his period in class. And then right in the next sentence, he gets straight to the point. He forgot to write down the due date and is specifically requesting that I remind him of the due date. And then he thanks me for my time. That's another important thing. It takes time to read emails, especially when you're getting hundreds a day. So always thank the person for their time, for reading your email. All right. Let's try and move this again without messing everything up. There we go. Part 5, the last part of your email, is your signature and sign-off. And this is something you always have to include. So a sign-off is going to be sincerely your name. So whatever is at the end of your email, you always want to have a proper sign-off, even if you are sending the email from your phone. It's just polite. And it's just yet another reminder, hey, this is who's sending you the email. Just like if you were leaving a message on someone's phone, you always want to start it and end it with your name and how they can contact you. So, sincerely is the most standard option, but there are other options for sign-offs besides sincerely. You could say best, then your name. Many thanks, and then your name. So that one, you don't even have to include the thanks in the body of the email. It's in your salutation. Respectfully, and then your name. Thank you in advance, and then your name. If you want to be fancy, like Jane Austen style, you could say cordially, and then your name. Or if you want to pretend that you're in a musical based on Founding Father Alexander Hamilton, you could say, I have the honor to be your obedient servant, comma, and then your name. So these are all valid options. Maybe not the last one, but most of these are valid options for a sign-off, or you could just use sincerely. I usually just use sincerely. So, a bad example of a sign-off would be sent from my iPhone. If you have an iPhone, this is usually the default. Delete it. and do a real sign off. Like, no one cares that you're sending it from your iPhone. It's 2020. It's not a flex anymore. A good example would be sincerely, Smitty, Werber, Jackerman, Jensen. Sincerely, comma, next line, your name. Now, this is optional, but I find it to be pretty helpful. You could consider making an email signature. So an email signature means that you write it down once and then it automatically shows up under all of your emails. So the way that you do that is in Gmail, you want to go to the settings icon, which looks like this little gear, and it's in the top right. And then you want to go to full settings and choose general at the top. Then you want to scroll down until where it says signature, and you can format and edit your signature in here. So signatures shouldn't be too long, especially because you guys are teenagers and you haven't gone to college yet, so you don't like have degrees or whatever. What I include in my signature as a teacher is I include my name, I include my pronouns, the classes that I teach, the other jobs that I have here, and then I include my email and my voicemail. As a student, you could just do your name, your pronouns if you would like, and maybe include your grade level on your email. But again, signatures are optional. The most important thing is that you have some sort of sign off at the end of your email. Other tips for writing emails: you always want to use a standard readable font. So the default font that Gmail gives you, or Times New Roman, or Verdana, something like that. You don't want to use things that are like cutesy, like Comic Sans. Even if you think that it looks cute, it might be a little bit difficult for people to read and it might look unprofessional. So just use standard fonts. Also, always use a reasonable font size. In Gmail, you have the option to set it to normal. Use normal as your font size. Limit your use of all caps, because when you read something in all caps, it internally sounds like you were being shouted at, and nobody likes that. Limit your use of exclamation marks. And when you do use an exclamation mark, only use one at a time. There is never any reason to use multiple exclamation marks. Still use correct capitalization. I know I'm stressing this a lot, but it's important. Still use correct capitalization, even if you like the aesthetic of lowercase letters, because your teacher does not like it. And keep your font color black. I know that hot pink is cute, but it's difficult to read. Just keep it black. All right. I hope that this lesson was helpful to you. And go and complete your assignment. Bye.